Good afternoon. The topic on which I will be discussing today is Shudraka's Mitchakatika, and I will be giving a short introductory discussion to the text. I will be referring first to the work of Shudraka, his contribution to Sanskrit literature. Then I will talk about the play Mitchakatika or the clay cart. In the long varied history of Sanskrit drama, the Mitchakatika of Shudraka has always occupied a unique place. It is perhaps one of the earliest extant Sanskrit drama. The times taken as one of the oldest extant Sanskrit drama, and sometimes it is a mere recast and continuation of a previous play, perhaps a play written by Bhasha. The name of the play is Charudatta. So, anonymous playwright Bhasas of the fragmentary Charudatta has been ascribed to him. Nevertheless, the play contains a detailed analysis of the contemporary society of Ujjaini. We have no exact knowledge of its date of composition, the origin, or even the authorship, nor of its relation to the previous work of Bhasa named Charudatta. This particular work has been variously assigned to periods ranging from, say, 2nd century BC to the 6th century AD. But even if none of the opinions advanced carries complete conviction, there can be hardly any doubt that this particular work has been composed, written during this period ranging from the 2nd century BC to 6th century AD. And therefore, we can regard this play as a fairly old work. Although there are a number of plays that are written in Sanskrit during that period, this play definitely holds a unique place. In spite of the number of legends which have gathered around the name of Shudraka, the author of this play, nothing particularly is known about him beyond the fanciful account given in the prologue of the play. We have read the prologue and we have seen that in the prologue to the play, description regarding Shudraka is given in the prologue itself. So we are told in the prologue, in this eulogistic references, that the author was a great Brahman king whose name was Sudraka. The play also contains several details regarding this man, the author of this work, and among the other curious details are his excellencies. We find that he was proficient in Rig Veda and the Samaveda. Shudraka is also said to be very proficient in mathematics, in the art concerning the courtesans, and in the lore of elephants. Statements which it is not impossible to support to a limited extent. And we find that the drama also reveals such excellency in dramatic arts. This royal author is also said to have obtained the grace of Lord Shiva, and after performing the horse sacrifice and placing his son on the throne, Shudraka died by entering the fire at the astonishing age of 100 years and 10 days. This is all mentioned in the prologue to the play Mritchakatika. Whether all this describes an historical or a mythical king, we are not certain, and Shudraka's identity and authorship therefore must be regarded as unsolved problem. And this is a fact that several writers of that period, especially the writers who belonged to the same period of Sanskrit literature, say Kalidasa's predecessor Somila, who also wrote Shudraka Katha, perhaps indicates Shudraka's legendary character. except even before Kalidasa's time. So we can at most be sure of the fact that Shudraka must have been there writing before Kalidasa's. Even later authors like Dandin, Bana, Kalhana, Somdeva, they all know Shudraka. He is already a great figure of romance and is associated with Vidisha, Pratisthana, Vardhamana, and other places. Some legends are connected with him with the Andhra Bhrityas and Satavahana period. So, Jawaharlal Nehru, in his Discovery of India, refers to Mitchakatika, this plays composition, as a text that developed during the Satvahana period. So, this legend or historic figure, whoever it is, the text is ascribed to him. And when they bear upon their very face the stamp of myth, so it is very convincing. Some fact may have been drawn into the legend, and probably real incidents and names of real persons occur. But there is always an attempt to separate the real from the unreal. The external evidence failing, the internal is equally elusive. So when we start assuming Mitchakatika through its process of recension from, say, Bhasa's Charudatta, we can say that evidently the play is a complete dramatic text whose authorship is also particularly specified. Recension in case of classical literature is a common factor. So a text is composed mainly in its oral form, and then the text moves through several forms of changes, transformations, adaptations, and the orality of the text is then turned into a literary text in the written medium. So in the old palm leaf manuscripts, when the text is written, it is copied through generations, and such adaptations also take place through performance of the text. So on the one hand, we have the tradition of performance of the text continuing. On the other hand, we have the recension of the text, the interpolation of the text, adaptation of the text, gradually continuing even in the written form. So the Mitchakatika that we read today is also in English translation, and this English translation is based on the manuscript that was available during that period. Even in the English version, we have such transformation of the text. Translators translate the text differently, and even when they are translating the text, they are also taking into account the source text, manuscript. So such differences are common. So we have in English translation so many Mitchakatikas where the verbatim translation is not possible. Most of the translators have taken recourse to prose translation rather than a kind of poetic translation of the text. There are several internal evidences as well as external evidences that give us clear glimpse about the period of composition. The external evidences sometimes fail, and even the internal evidences that are there in the play are sometimes elusive. So even when we assume this Mitchakatika as a text that has come through a process of recension and change, we can come to this conclusion that it is definitely a dramatic text written in Sanskrit that contains so many other dialectical languages, other languages that were prevalent during that period, and the authorship is also correct. So royal authors during that time, during those historic times, were not averse to having works written for themselves. So some maintain that Shudraka is also the king Shudraka, who is not at all the real author. Rather, he has commissioned the work, and under him the work has been written, and because of this, his name has been ascribed as the author of the play, and such eulogies are written in his honor. He is represented in this prologue as a wise and grateful courtier So this work has been ascribed to this royal patron Sudraka, and while the real name of the author or authors may have perished. So this supposition also does not hold substance, because we usually find during that period the court poets used to write. But in this case, the king himself is a court poet, is himself is a skilled artisan and writer. So it may be possible that Shudraka himself might have written the text. Another assumption is that this text is an adaptation of Bhasha's Charudatta, a revision or a kind of recension of the original story on which Bhasha has set the Charudatta itself. True to its form, this form is that of Prakaran. Prakaran talks about a story based on invention, poet's invention. So if we take Bhasha's Charudatta into account, and we can say that Mitchakateka is based on Bhasha's Charudatta, we can say that this innovative story, the poet's invention, is more or less ascribed to Bhasha rather than Shudraka himself. The identity of the author is sometimes passed through his work, and Shudraka in this text claims to be the author of the text. We find that such hypothesis of an early date based on some accidental similarities with other forms of drama, especially the form of new Greek comedy that came to India during that period, might be possible. We can also find some similarity between the comedies of plotters and Shudraka's Mitchakatika. And we are left with such an impression that perhaps during that period there was an interchange of ideas, literary thoughts, and sensibilities. Sanskrit literature has a rich tradition, but this tradition is also based on certain sources that are drawn from European, especially classical Greek and Roman literatures. We are sometimes left with an impression that, however inadequate, it is not possible to date Mitchakatika after, say, 6th century AD. So in around 8th century AD, we find Vamana already referring to a composition by Shudraka, and he even quotes two passages. So one of such passages can be seen in the original text, Bhasha's Charudatta, while the second quotation that does not occur in Bhasha's Charudatta. Whatever may have been the date and whoever may have been the author, there can be no doubt that the Mitchakatika that we are now reading is one of the few Sanskrit plays in which the dramatist has consciously deviated from the tradition and tried to create some kind of new drama. Even in Natya Shastra, when Bharata Muni is referring to such forms like Prakaran, he is not talking of Mitchakatika as an example. So this can be stated to be an evidence that Mitchakatika was probably written after the composition of Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra. But if we take that into account, we can also say that Mitchakatika does not fit into the exact definition of Prakaran given by Bharata Muni in Natya Shastra. It is a play with a difference. So we can say that this playwright, Shudraka, departs from the beaten tracks and attempts to envisage rather a new type of play, a wider, fuller depiction of contemporary life. And he is paid for his boldness and originality by the general disregard of great works previously ascribed. He has not taken the story from the extant epic or popular narratives that were there, and he has focused on a particular geographical space set in a particular time. Even historical evidences prove that this text is located around 2nd century BC to the 6th century AD. We know that this writer is consciously writing a drama. So he's also not writing a sentimental verse that was prevalent during this period. He is neither writing a Mahakabya or an epic. It is an unusual type of drama, dramatic poem, and possesses distinctive qualities, dramatic qualities. And this drama, when it is adapted even in modern production, appeals to the masses because of the dramatic qualities, because of the modern taste and ideas that are there in this play. Apart from the graphic picture of society that the play definitely presents, we have the picture of contemporary life. The picture that is here is truly worthy of a great dramatist. There is again a plot, the Vastu, the swift moving plot of sustained interest. That means suspense is generated throughout the play. In its variety of incident and characters, in its freedom and freedom from the usual fault of over elaboration, we find that there is a sharpness of characterization. Characters are drawn from varied fields of life. People belong to different vocations. Men and women almost stand on an equal platform, although their working space has been assigned and ascribed differently. So it has a sharpness of characterization. And we find that in its use of direct and homely imagery, we find a clear, forcible, unaffected diction. So metrically and stylistically, linguistically, we find a skillful employment of various forms of Sanskrit and Prakrit metrics. So dialogues of this play are very witty, and it is seen in general that the play contains certain amount of liveliness and dramatic effect. There is also deep pathos and definite quality of humor that is very rare in Sanskrit literature. We know that Sanskrit literature cannot be classified as tragedy and comedy. Most of the Dasarupakas do not present death and tragic end. Although the scenes of death occur off stage in some plays. In spite of somewhat conventional happy ending, we find that there is again a convergence with the tragic statement, so that pathos is there underlying the play throughout. So we have a blending of the tragic and comic in Mritchikatika. That is again innovative. That purity of genre that Aristotle talked about, the separation of dramatic poetry into tragedy and comedy, this cannot be seen in Mritchikatika. So it comes very close to a kind of serious play, an imitation of action that is serious, complete in itself, but with a happy ending, non-cathartic. So the emotion of pity and fear that a tragedy usually arouses, of course, can be seen in this play, but that is supplemented by a greater sense of happiness and joy that is there at the end of the play. So all these excellencies that can be seen in Mritchikatika invest the simple love story that is shaped in a 10-act comedy into an excellent play. So this 10-act comedy that is shaped around middle class life and contains a plot structure that is complex with elements drawn from different various threads or plot lines, stories interwoven together. We have a charm that is peculiarly its own, and Shakespeare must be a reference point here because of all the Sanskrit plays that we usually read. This play comes closest to Shakespearean drama, and this is because of Mritchikatika's similarities with Plautus's plays, Plautine plays, like the Menachemi, like the Pot of Gold that is prescribed for your study. Mritchikatika has not only a curious title, so we refer to this title, Mritchikatika, and this Mritchikatika title is also related to an equally curious theme and treatment. This word, Sanskrit word Michchakatika, can be literally translated into the little clay cart. That means a cart that is made up of clay. So this title is derived from an episode in the play. You remember while we were reading the play, we found such an episode where Rohan Sena has a clay cart and is envious of the boy next door who is playing with a golden cart. And Vasanta Sena, being charmed by the son, by the boy and his innocence, she offers her jewelry and puts that on the clay cart. So this title is derived from an episode which leads to the leaving of the heroine's jewels in the toy cart of the hero's little son Rohasena. And this, of course, gives rise to complications of the plot, which fortunately are finally resolved in the denouement of the play. During the following action of the play, we find that there is a resolution, and to this resolution, the complexity revolving or complications revolving around the clay cart studded with jewels is done. So the episode of the clay cart has also psychological significance in the turn of heroine's life. So this is a second level of significance of the title of the play. When we relate that to the life of the heroine, especially Vasanta Sena, vis-a-vis the life of Dhuta also, we find that Dhuta represents the little clay cart and is elemental, passionate, generous, loving, virtuous, dependent, passive, and like clay remains at the core of the material world. Even in the life of Vasanta Sena, we also have this element of clay-like existence. So clay is a metaphor of purity of the human soul, material purity of the human soul. So gold is contrasted to clay in the play, and we find this contrast, the binary juxtaposition of gold and clay, work in this dialectical play that gives us a synthesis that clay is perhaps more valuable than the, the precious metal gold. What is more remarkable is that in this drama, for the first time, we turn from the stories of kings and queens, stories that are drawn from myths and legends, to a more plebeian atmosphere, middle class life, and from the dramatization of time worn heroic stories to a more refreshing plot based on situation and incident drawn from common everyday life. Therefore, the scene that we have in this play belong to the world that is plebeian, laid in a cosmopolitan city like Ujjain. When we turn from other masterpieces of Kalidasas and Bhavabhuti, and when we focus on this play, we find ourselves descending, as it were, to a refined atmosphere of gaiety, of poetry, of sentiment, of a kind of firm rock of grim reality. Yet this drama is not at all shorn of real poetry and sentiment. We find excellent use of poetry in this play, although when we were reading the play in translation, in English translation, we could not enjoy the flair of poetry. We can at most say that yes, the employment of metaphors and similes in this play make this an excellent work of imaginative poetry. So poetry flourishes in this play in a strange manner, gradually unfolding itself. So even in the world of thieves, gamblers, rogues, political schemers, mendicants, courtiers, idlers, police, even constables, housemaids, wards, courtesans, in this world of characters drawn from various situations, Sudraka can put his finer poetic taste into practice, and the love that is at the core, based on the depiction of Sringar Rasa, is not the sad and romantic love of, say, Dushyanta and Shakuntala, the woodland beloved of Abhigyanam Shakuntalam. So there is not yet a fond and deep conjugal affection that we find in the plays of Bhavabhuti, especially the story of Rama and Sita. But here we have the love of a man who can be seen as an ordinary man roaming in the town. And this man is in love with a courtesan. Chaludatta is in love with a courtesan. So, this love of a man for a courtesan, which is nevertheless very pure, strong, and tender, is presented in such a wonderful manner that we have, against the backdrop of Ujjaini, an excellent dramatic representation of contemporary reality. The strange world supplies a fitting background to the strange love. And there is, of course, an inventive originality in the representation. The private affairs of the lovers, the story, main story, is combined with the story of political intrigue, where we have Arakya, the rebel hero, fighting against King Palaka. So this also involves the question of city and kingdom. So two stories, one very private story, the love story of Vasantasena and Charudatta. The other is a public story of the new king, Arakya, who is succeeding to the throne after defeating King Palaka. So the political as well as private, both are combined together. So the plot is also ingenious, and we are easily thrown into comedy based on situational mistakes. So it can be called a situational comedy of errors leading to disasters. So there are also incidents of ordinary common burglary. So someone is stealing the gold from the house. So there is also the story of slavery. Someone is paying money in order to rescue a slave, a female slave from Vasantasena. There is also an element of happiness. So there is also an attempted murder. And finally, we have the trial scene, the court scene. So many types of scenes are all incorporated, and there is a considerable fertility of dramatic imagination displayed throughout the work. The plot is well made, okay, very detailed, and the only serious defect you can say is perhaps the length. So we took 10 sessions to read the play. This 10-act play requires long performance time. So Sanskrit drama was not a play performance that was to be performed within a single revolution of the sun, depicting a story, an event, an incident that happens in a single rotation of the sun. That means in a single day. Rather, it is capable of presenting a story that is much longer, and that too with Sanskrit poetics at work. It is capable of presenting a long drama that combines the dramatic and the narrative together. And through this fertility of dramatic imagination, the playwright Sudraka has, of course, done some justice. The drama is also singular in conceiving large number of interesting characters. So if we just visit the gallery of characters that are there in this play, we can say that the characters are drawn from all grades of society. So we have the high souled Brahman, and we also have ordinary plebeian thief in this play. So this is a wide range and variety of the play that makes the characters drawn from different aspects of society introduced in the play, and they all contribute to the dramatic structure. So they are presented not as types. Furthermore, the characters are not type characters. Although we say that good drama depends on recasting of characters that are typical characters drawn from typical situations and placed in typical situation in drama. But here we have the characters are non-typical, non-stereotypical. They are presented as individuals with diverse interests, and also there is in the structure of the play a broad scope for both farce and tragedy, for satire and pathos, for the representation of poetic language, even wise wisdom, wise commentaries are there. So there is kindness in the representation. There is also a touch of humanity in the representation. So we have this motley assemblage of characters in Mritchakatika, and most of the characters are almost raw characters. Some of them are rascals, and some of these characters are very lovable characters, gentlemen, especially the Nita of the play, Charudatta, who stands out prominently. The hero, even the heroines of the play are of noble character. The character of Sakara, Samsanaka, is very interesting. So he is ignorant, full of verbose dialogues, and these dialogues are loaded with his prejudicial knowledge about things, false knowledge about things, with his ignorant conceit, and there is always a brutal lust in him. So we have Sakaras or Samasthanaka as an person who is a bundle of contradiction, a person who contains so many aspects that are contrasting. But this is also a revelation of Sudraka's excellent power of characterization, effective characterization, that is shown through the representation of such characters. Especially the main character of the play, the noble Charudatta, is presented as a large-hearted Brahman by birth, a wealthy merchant by profession, but that wealth has now been lost. But he does not represent the typical Nagaraka type, okay, whose whole round of life consists of love and pleasure only. For there is nothing of the gilded dandy or dilettante in his refined character. And we find that his chief interest is not gallantry, neither hunting, heroic deeds, or wrestling. There's a note of quiet self-control. So there's visible in most of the scenes. So even in love, most of the courtship is done by Vasantasena. Charudatta remains passive throughout. So he's a young man of breeding, good breeding. Cultural tastes are there. He has uprightness, and his liberality wins the admiration of the whole city. Everyone in the sex, they admire. Everyone admire Charudatta. But he is also a man who is stuck with poverty. So poverty-ridden man who had once upon a time wealth that he has squandered along with time. If the change of fortune makes him bitter, it does not make him a misanthrope, nor does it debase his mind. So he is not a hater of mankind, not a person who has a debased mind. So this suffering of life, the poverty in life, teaches him to take life in its proper value. Charudatta in this play is endowed with great qualities, and like the conventional hero, he is made the paragon of virtue. But this virtue is also counterbalanced with the faults in Charudatta. So he is austere or self-denying, but he is also a perfect man of the world. See his finer taste. He loves literature a lot. He is fond of music and art. He does not disdain even gambling. And his share of Maitriya's bias against the people is not seen in Charudatta. He does not even have caste pride that we often find in Maitreya. So he never assumes a self-righteous attitude. This is a remarkable aspect of Charudatta. His great virtues are softened by the milk of human kindness that he often displays in the play. His youth does not exhibit indifference. And perhaps the most outstanding feature of his character is his quiet and deep love for Vasantasena. Even while loving Vasantasena, he does not ignore his wife, Dhuta. So there is an equal reciprocation of love towards Dhuta as well as respect towards Dhuta. We should not judge that society with our own tradition of monogamy. It was a polygamous society, and Brahmins, they were allowed to marry. more than once. So here we have the wrong of this unconventional love that is there between Charudatta and Vasantasena gradually disappearing and is being replaced by the search for an ideal beauty, ideal form of love, in its purity, in its strength of truth, and in its urge to escape any form of degradation. We find this love almost coming very close to the ideals of love. Vasantasena, on the other hand, has neither the girlish charm of Shakuntala, she does not have even the mature dignity of Sita. So we have a mix in Vasantasena, the mix between, say, Shakuntala of Kalidasa, and Sita, that is depicted in epic as well as other plays. So Vasantasena has neither the girlish charm of Shakuntala nor the wise woman dignity of Sita. But she is nevertheless witty and wise, disillusioned and sophisticated, and she has almost encountered or seen much of the sordid world. Yet she has the heart of a romance. This is unique. In spite of her suffering, she has a romantic core, and her love is true and deep, even in a social status which makes such a feeling difficult. She is very wealthy in the play, and much wealth and position she has achieved is through her performance. That is another aspect. So she is a courtesan who has achieved wealth and position, even respect from society, because of her proficiency in song, dance, music. So we have this heredity calling in her, and her heart that is working against the entire act of courtesan. So she is trying to escape from her life as a courtesan by entering into the conjugal life or into a matrimonial life with Charudatta. Her meeting with Charudatta affords this way of escape for her, and she is definitely afraid of this risk that she is taking. So this is a misfortune of her birth and occupation that she thinks will stand in her way towards the consummation of love. So it is a case of love at first sight. So Vasantasana's love for Charudatta is a case of love at first sight. And for the first time, she is really in love. Although, as a quotation, she has performed love so many times to her dance recitals or song recitals. So, in this case, she is in love, love at first sight, and she is really in love. The touch of this new emotion quickens rapidly into a pervading flame and tries to burn her to ashes. So it is so strange even to herself. She even cannot come in terms with a new form of love that she has generated. She can yet hardly believe that she is an outcast of society, and she wants to win the love of great Charudatta. Charudatta is also the ornament of Ujjaini. So the best courtesan of Ujjaini has fallen in love with a great Brahmin merchant of Ujjaini, Charudatta. So we have the representation of this love the morning after their first union. We have a fascinating representation of the landscape as well as of the emotions related to love. Vasantasena is fascinated by the lovely face of Charudatta's little son, and this Vatsalya rasa that she expresses is also related to the Singar rasa that she is exhibiting towards Charudatta. So when she beholds the lovely face of Rohasena and stretches out her arms in great hunger for motherhood, she also displays something that has been denied to her, especially the maternal love. The child in his innocence refuses to come to her, and he also refuses to take her as his mother because she wears such fine things and ornaments of gold. So this refusal of Rohasena also inspires her to give away her jewelry. So this soft spoken son of Charudatta, gives a statement that makes her take off her ornaments. And then what she does, she fills the toy cart of the child and even asks him to get a gold card to pay with. This, her love, makes her realize the emptiness of riches and the fullness of pure and true affection. So, that is one of the central themes of the play, the rejection of the material world and acceptance of the pure affection. Even when Sakara threatens to kill her for not submitting to himself, she taunts him as an inamorta of a beggarly Brahman. So she is not ashamed and replies, "Delightful words, pray proceed." So there is some kind of courage in her. So she even grows furious and brutal towards Sakara. When Sakara also vents his anger and takes her by throat, she is not afraid. She is not trying to escape from the scene. And she does not cry out of succor and simply remembers Charudatta. Remembering Charudatta's name, she faints on the stage. So we have this rage of Sakara and the love of Vasantasena set together on the stage. Sakara strangles her, and even when she is on the verge of imminent death, the name of Charudatta is still on her lips, and she murmurs in a struggling voice, "Namo Chaludasta, Namo Chaludasta," means my homage be to Chaludatta. Such a dramatic action reaches a natural climax, and the work that, of course, was moving towards a tragic note is turned into a comedy of reunion towards the end. And we may say that the denouement is weak, but as we were reading the play, we found that how interesting it is when he's on the verge of death and Charudatta is saying Vasantasena, Vasantasena. Suddenly the news comes that King Araka has become the king, new king of the land. The news comes that Charudatta might be rescued, and then finally comes Vasantasena in the scene. So the drama that was to end in a tragic note, especially after the trial scene, is converted into a comedy of reunion. And this reunion is logically developed by a skillful handling of the incidents. The happy ending is a convention enforced by theory, but the drama convention is nowhere respected as mere convention. So, in conclusion, I must say that Mritchakatika is a drama of social and artistic challenge, is an innovative drama, and dramatist is perfectly aware of his strength in putting them forth. So, this text can be seen as one of the best dramatic representation of real life situation, and the author has never sacrificed real life for a manipulated, legendary, stereotyped stories just for the evocation of sentiment and production of action. So here, if we find that the original Bhasa Chaludatta has been properly reworked and reshaped into a more interesting dramatic text, reworking on the old pieces. And definitely, Shudraka as a playwright has produced a masterpiece which stands by itself in its entire conception and execution. Thus, we have one of the finest specimens of classical Sanskrit drama in this play. To conclude, I must say that we have drawn our attention to different aspects of the play: the compositional aspect, the authorial version of the text, the sources in Bhasa's Chaludatta. We have also tried to analyze the major characters of the play, the interplay of two plots. We have also discussed the title of the play and its significance. So these are the salient features of the play and important aspects that make this play definitely a masterpiece of Sanskrit literature. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask, raise questions so that I can discuss and give reply. Please feel free to ask questions, any observation you want to make. Next day, I shall be discussing on Mritchakatika as a prakaran. Okay, any questions, any observation you want to make? So shall I conclude my lecture? Thank you very much for your audience.
Thank you, sir.